Rowe, Bagley, Harding, Johnson, Melton, Palermo. Mr. President. He is here.
Thank you. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and remarks by Councilmember John Rowe.
The United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great to see you. You can have a seat. It's great to see such a great crowd today. It's been about 10 days since we had an historic event in our city that really did impact the whole city. And I think I would be remiss if I didn't just take a moment, we would all be remiss if we didn't just take a moment to thank the responders that have been out there working tirelessly. There's been people from OPPD and people from our city departments that have worked outside of their normal department, and volunteer groups and neighbors helping neighbors. And I just think it's a time for us to just pause for a moment, say thank you, show our appreciation for the people that really did respond in a great way for us in our city. Thanks.
An affidavit of publication is on file for the pre-council and city council meeting, and a current copy of the Open Meeting Act is posted in a white binder on the east wall of the legislative chambers.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming to the City Council today. We look forward to hearing your testimony on our many items. Please make sure your cell phones are either on mute or turned off.
Item 6, Mayor Stothart presents the 2022 budget.
Welcome, Mayor. The lectern is yours.
Well, good afternoon, Council President Festerson, City Council members, and citizens of Omaha. I am pleased to be with you today to present our 2022 recommended general fund budget. This budget focuses on recovery, reinvestment, and rebuilding from the COVID-19 pandemic. The past year was an incredible challenge for all of us, and I am so proud of the way our community has responded. Our recovery is well underway, and I am very happy with the priorities that we have adopted in this proposed budget. The 2022 general fund budget is $456 million. That is a 3.5% increase, consistent with prior budgets that I have recommended. I am pleased to report that this budget includes a 2% property tax rate reduction. I believe we should lower the property tax rate whenever we can. Many of our citizens have experienced financial hardships over the last 16 months. Others have been surprised by unexpected and significant increases in the valuation of their properties. We have also received federal funding to replace lost revenue due to COVID-19. For these reasons, I am proposing the 2% reduction. This is the third time that I have lowered the property tax levy, resulting in a savings for Omaha taxpayers. This reduction will bring our levy down to 46.9. Our goal is to offset, in part, the valuation increases that some have received. And for 50% of the city taxpayers whose valuations did not change this year, the City of Omaha property tax bill for 2022 will be less than in 2021. There is more good news regarding property taxes that I am pleased to share with you today. You will recall that in May of 2020, the voters overwhelmingly approved our $200 million Roadmap to Better Streets bond issue to double funding for road repair and maintenance. That work is well underway, making significant differences by providing improved, safer roads in Omaha. At the same time, the voters approved a property tax rate increase to pay for the program, a tax rate change that we have yet to implement. I'm happy to report that this voter-approved increase can be deferred once again. The existing bond capacity and good cash management allow us to defer this tax rate change. This deferral, along with the property tax rate cut I am proposing in 2022, represent the most significant property tax relief actions in the last 20 years for the city of Omaha. The City of Omaha receives approximately 20% of your annual property tax payment. Other taxing entities account for the other 80%. I encourage all units of local government to recognize the impacts of property valuations in our city and in our county and adjust property tax rates whenever possible. It is important to also acknowledge significant progress over the last 2 years by the governor and the unicameral in directing far more money to the state's property tax relief programs. Everyone doing their part is how we will make a difference to reduce the property tax rate and the property tax burden. I also want to provide you with an update on the federal COVID relief funds that we have received and then distribute out into our community. 3 significant pieces of federal legislation have been passed to help cities and our citizens. Congress passed the CARES Act when businesses were closing, unemployment was spiking, and much of our economy was essentially shut down. The CARES Act was designed to provide economic stimulus nationwide. However, the act did not provide direct financial aid to the City of Omaha. We worked with the state of Nebraska and Douglas County and eventually received $30 million from each, a total of $60 million. Most of this funding was directed towards eligible public safety expenses. Early this year, I requested funding available through the Consolidation Appropriations Act of 2021 for residential rent and utility assistance. Initially, we received $22 million. As of last week, $10 million had already been distributed. We will receive a second round of rent and utility funding, $17 million, next month. Now we are planning for the use and distribution of ARPA funds. Congress passed the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021, or ARPA, in March. This time, Omaha did receive direct funding, and I want to thank our congressional delegation for advocating for that change. Omaha will receive approximately $112 million over the next 2 years, and we have already received half. These funds are intended to replace city revenue losses through 2023, support community programs to respond to COVID impacts, and promote economic recovery in our city. ARPA is a one-time federal program. All expenses with ARPA, however, must meet the federal guidelines. And these funds are not allocated in the 2022 city budget that I'm recommending today. We know that there is significant interest in ARPA funding from many of our nonprofits that do so much work for our community. We will ask for public input as we develop a plan for this money. You can provide suggestions on the homepage of our website, cityofomaha.org, beginning today. Generally, ARPA funds can be directed towards responding to the COVID public health emergencies and its negative economic impact, replacing lost public sector revenue to support and strengthen public services and retain jobs, supporting economic stabilization for households and businesses, and to make investments in water, sewer, and broadband infrastructure. First, we will stabilize the city finances and build back all the public safety resources to pre-COVID levels. We will then prioritize the hard-hit tourism and hospitality industry, community service programs, broadband expansion, affordable housing, violence intervention and prevention, and improvement to public spaces. It is important to note that Douglas County will also receive ARPA allocation of approximately $111 million. It is critical for the city and the county to coordinate our plans to avoid duplication, especially in areas such as mental health programs, so we provide a wide and diverse scope of assistance. The unprecedented federal borrowing and spending for COVID recovery will impact our economy and our country for decades to come. The economic turbulence over the pandemic has demonstrated the need to better prepare for emergencies that impact our city finances so severely. The best way for the City of Omaha to safeguard our budget is to build up our cash reserves and use our savings accounts only when absolutely necessary. I can assure you that the alternatives of layoffs, reducing services, or revenue increases are all steps that we have been able to avoid. To build our reserves for the future, we acted last year and added approximately $18 million to our reserve accounts. We were able to do this last year because of the budget reductions that we made at the start of the pandemic, larger than expected investment income returns, and CARES Act funding. Between this year and next, we will add another nearly $4 million to our reserve accounts. With healthy balances in these accounts, we will be better prepared for unknown events that happen like they happened last year and continue to be responsible stewards of our taxpayers' money. Our general fund budget funds city services, expenses and programs that meet the goals of my administration, improve public safety, manage the city budget, support economic growth and job creation, improve the taxpayer experience, and respond to public health safety and financial consequences of the pandemic. Let me touch on a few of the 2022 budget highlights. The police department budget will increase by 3.25%. Police sworn staffing will be budgeted for 906 officers in 2022, the same level as we had in 2021. I am thankful that our citizens recognize the important and dangerous work of our officers. I will continue to reject calls to defund or to dismantle our police department. We are working hard to rebuild our police after COVID-related recruitment delays. The same is true of our fire department, and recruit classes for both departments are now back on schedule. The current number of police officers on duty now is 892, which includes the recruits that are now in training. A second recruit class will start later this year. Our commitment continues to the mental health co-responder program, crisis intervention training for officers, and peer support program to ensure officers have full access to mental health resources. The fire department's general fund budget will increase by 4%. It includes 6 additional sworn employees to fully staff Medic 2, which is reinstated in April to increase emergency services in downtown Omaha. We will begin a fire recruit class later this year in November. In the Public Works Department, we have identified needs that will require an additional 28 employees. Most will work with our expanded road repair and maintenance program, management of our sewers, and operations at our water resource recovery facilities. As you know, our solid waste budget increased considerably with the new trash and recycling contract. We are seeing increasingly positive results, including a 47% increase in curbside recycling, which increases our cost. We will hire additional housing inspectors in our planning department for our rental registry program. In 2022, we estimate to complete over 1,500 rental property inspections. The planning department also manages many of our COVID relief efforts, especially direct aid to families and individuals, and we appreciate their hard work. The Omaha Convention and Visitors Bureau leads our recovery efforts in the hospitality and visitor sector. We will increase its general fund budget to $2 million next year. We have a lot to do to increase the demand, the loss of jobs, and to get tourism revenue back up after a particularly weak 2020 due to COVID. The Convention and Visitors Bureau will also design and implement recovery programs for this sector with ARPA funding. This industry was truly devastated in 2020, and it is one that will lag the overall recovery for quite some time. Each year, we fund programs managed by Omaha nonprofit organizations that support our goals. This year, we have added new programs that provide mental health services and other needs identified for pandemic recovery. Our support of these community service programs is always a big part of our efforts to improve the health, safety, and welfare of Omaha citizens, especially our youth. These important programs provide services for job training and employment, youth athletics and mentoring, violence prevention, services for people experiencing homelessness, and many others. Along with our recommended budget, I am pleased today to present the 6-year capital improvement program. The CIP outlines long-term significant investments in transportation, public safety, public facilities, parks, environmental and sewer improvements. The updated CIP includes funding for important road construction projects, the completion of the Keystone Trail, the Riverfront Trail, Phase 4, the Baby Bob pedestrian bridge linking the riverfront to CHI Health Center and TD Ameritrade Park, a new fire station in Northwest Omaha, a new public safety headquarters for our police and fire department, and dozens more. The total investment over the next 6 years in the CIP is nearly $2.3 billion, an average of $383 million every year. While our general fund budget pays for our day-to-day operations, you can see how significant our ongoing CIP commitments are to the growth, development, and infrastructure needs of our dynamic city. The 22 recommended budget and the CIP are now, at this moment, available for public review on the City of Omaha website. Thank you to the council for all of your help and your input, and thank you to all the city staff, department directors, especially our finance team, for their diligence and their hard work on behalf of the Omaha taxpayers. A public hearing on this budget will be held in this chamber on August 3rd at 6:30 p.m., and I encourage citizens to attend and provide us with feedback. It is an honor to present our budget and priorities with you today. I take the responsibility of managing your tax dollars very seriously, and doing so in an accurate, fair, and transparent manner will always be my goal. Thank you all. Thank you very much. Here we go.
All right.
CIP is
Coming out of there. All right, thank you.
already.
Good to see you again. It's been a while. Thank you, Mayor. We'll get things readjusted here before we move to our next items, but as she indicated, the budget and CIP will have a public hearing in this chambers on August 3rd at 6:30. The City Council's work on this document begins tomorrow with our own hearings, and any council member can propose amendments to the budget, and we schedule a presumptive vote on August 17th on the budget itself. Madam Clerk.
Item 7, a resolution to approve the revised preliminary plat for South Streams located southeast of 204th and Q Streets. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing on number 7 is today. We'll hear from the applicant first, Mr. Jobin.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the council, Larry Jobin, 11440 West Center Road, appearing on behalf of the applicant. This is a 125-acre development on the southeast corner of 204th and Q Street. It's a combination of different densities of residential with some mixed use. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Are there any proponents on number 7? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 7 is approved, 7-0. Items 8 through 13 can be considered together for Grayhawk Replat 4, located northeast of 147th and Spencer Streets. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval. Items 8 and 9 are ordinances to rezone this property from MU District to DR District and MU District. Item 10, an ordinance to approve a major amendment to a mixed-use district development agreement. Items 11 and 12 are resolutions to approve the preliminary plat and final plat. Item 13 is a resolution to approve the subdivision agreement.
The public hearing and vote on items 8 through 13 are today. The applicant, I believe we have by Zoom, Melissa Long. I think you're off mute now, Melissa.
Hi, I'm Melissa Long,
Thank you. And your address, please?
4969 F Street, Omaha, Nebraska 68117.
And here to answer questions?
I am.
Great, thank you. Are there any proponents that want to speak today in the chambers? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Roll call.
Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Items 8 through 13 are approved, 7-0. Item 14, a resolution to approve the 406 Woolworth Avenue Townhomes Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project Plan located at 406 Woolworth Avenue in an amount up to $167,623.
Public hearing and vote on number 14 is today. Mr. Seaton.
Yes, Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning. This TIF project is a residential infill project, a little smaller scale than some of the other ones you'll be reviewing today. There's a single-family home on the site now. It'll be retained as a rental unit. The garage will be demolished, and they will construct a 5-unit row home. These will be market rate rentals. Developer David Burton. Project's about a $1.1 million investment. And they're asking for $167,623 in TIF support. Project meets the criteria of the TIF program. It's an appropriate use for the area. We ask for your approval.
Thank you. Are there any proponents today on number 14?
Hi, David Burton, 14993 Charles Circle. I'm the owner and applicant, here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any other proponents? Seeing none, any opponents?
Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha, 68132. I'm opposed to both of these items and the other ones later on in regards to tax increment financing. Largely because I'd like the city to explain to the citizens the difference between these two items that include city participation and the ones later on in the agenda that do not include city participation, and how that does not come out of my pocket in taxes. It's not clear that why there is a difference between TIF for these and TIF for the others. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents today? See none, public hearings closed. Ms. Melton, you're recognized.
Just wanted to make a note that we have 3 TIF agenda items. And the third one we just put at the end because we anticipated there'd be a lot of people that would be here. So there's no difference in any of the 3 TIF agenda items. The only difference is the order in which we're calling them up. So just so that there is no confusion there. And none of the TIF applications require taxpayer money. No taxpayer money will be going to any of these projects. As I've said before, this is just an offset. The developer is the one that is responsible for paying off the TIF loan. And the only thing that is eligible for the TIF expenses, at least in one of them, is public infrastructure. So a lot of the TIF benefits the public without using public funds. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. I notice we have you, your nameplate is Brinker Harding today. You may want to switch those two. I just noticed that today. All right, no further lights. Is there a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second, roll call.
Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo.
Yes.
Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 14 is approved, 7-0. Item 15, a resolution to approve the O'Keefe Lofts Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project Plan located at 1402 Jones Street in an amount up to $1,700,000.
Public hearing and vote on number 15 is today. The applicant, Mr. Seaton.
Yes, good afternoon. Don Seaton once again on behalf of the City Planning Department and the project. This project is a historic building rehab of a building located near the old market downtown at 1402 Jones Street. It's a very recognizable historic building, historic rehab project. It's currently the headquarters of O'Keefe Elevator and has the O'Keefe Elevator offices. This building will be renovated for 19 condominium units on the upper floors and about 13,500 square feet of first floor commercial space, maybe up to 4 retail bays in there. It is a historic building in a historic district, constructed in 1921. And the comprehensive building rehab includes an addition on top of the building. The applicants are continuing to work with the Planning Department's urban design staff regarding the design and configuration of the addition on top, and they will need to continue doing that. They're also providing $67,000 worth of public improvements in the adjacent right-of-way. There's some additional things the city would like, and the city may participate in some of those costs as well. So the applicants are coordinating with the Public Works Department, and they will need to continue that as well. But that all aside, it's still appropriate and ready for approval as a TIF project. Total project investment downtown is a little, well, close to $11.7 million is the estimate. They're asking for $1,700,000 in TIF support. The developer is O'Keefe Lofts, LLC, managed by Connor Lund. And again, this project meets the required criteria of the city's TIF program, complies with the city's master plan. It's an appropriate land use for the area, and we ask for your approval.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents on number 15 today?
Thank you, Mr. President. First time I'm saying that. Brent Beller, 11440 West Center Road, on behalf of the project applicant O'Keefe Lofts LLC. With me today is Connor Lund, the developer sponsor of this project. Don, as always, does a fantastic job describing the project. The one thing I do want to highlight is currently this building's valued at $2.6 million. So the developer will always pay the property taxes on that $2.6 million. Those property taxes, as the mayor just said, 20% go to the city, 80% go to the other various taxing jurisdictions here in the state of Nebraska. And it's the incremental value property taxes that we will continue to pay to help defray some of the costs for this project. This is a headquarters for O'Keefe. They're vacating this building. But with that, 19 new residential apartments are coming in, 13,000 square feet of retail and commercial space on that first floor. That'll bring in about 40 to 50 new jobs to this building, in addition to sales tax revenue, restaurant tax, all good things for our city. So projects like this that are incentivized by TIF are really good. It's exciting to be a part of it. This is a very iconic building in our city. Congrats to Connor to get it under contract, because a lot of folks were looking at it. So we're excited to get going. As Don said, we have a little bit of work we need to do with Public Works on a bike lane, and then also some of the improvements on the top floor. But with that, we're here for any questions, and of course, we appreciate your consideration.
Thank you. Are there any other proponents on number 15 that want to speak today? Seeing none, any opponents?
Do I have to give my name and address again?
Yes.
I do realize that they're going to remove that from the requirements in the State House. Anyway, I'm against this also for the same basic reasons, but
And Larry, your name and address.
I
for the record.
remember a gentleman that had a hotel.
Larry, your name and address for the record, please.
I'm sorry?
Your name and address for the record, please.
Larry Store, 5015 Lafayette
Thank you.
Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska. Soon to be illegal to do that. Anyway,
That's
I
not
remember
accurate
a
either,
gentleman
but
that came
continue.
down here and wanted TIF financing to rehabilitate an older hotel building so he could provide low-income rental housing. He was denied. You could have used TIF money to rehabilitate that building in the near downtown, but she denied it. I don't know what the difference is. This has historic significance, so did that. So what's the real difference? Simply because he was titled as a slum landlord? These buildings, some of these buildings are run down. Yes, it costs you money to tear them down. And quite frankly, I don't know that all the developers around Omaha will stay in Omaha and pay all the property taxes until this so-called loan is paid off. So I really don't think citizens understand it well enough. And we'd like to be able to understand the real truth of the matter. But what's good for one ought to be good for the other. What's good for one building ought to be good for another building. I think even our state constitution says you won't make special laws for special people. So maybe the World Herald would like to come and get the truth out of you, because I'm tired of reading it in the Reader, this stuff. We don't hear it in the World Herald or on radio. And it's not really explained here. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents today on number 15? Seeing none, public hearing's closed. There's a motion and a second. Roll call.
Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 15 is approved, 7-0. Item 16, to consider a Class C liquor license application for a public house located at 11008 Prairie Brook Road.
Public hearing and vote on number 16 is today. We have the applicant by Zoom, Corey Keith.
Hi, Corey Keith, 2004 South 182nd Circle, Omaha, Nebraska, 68130. Available for any questions you guys may have.
Great, thank you. Any other proponents on number 16? Any opponents? Seeing none, public hearing's closed. Roll call.
Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 16 is approved, 7-0. Item 17, to consider a Class I liquor license application for Everett's located at 8807 Maple Street.
Public hearing on vote on number 17 is today. We have the applicant by Zoom, Jason Thiessen.
Hi, Jason Thiessen, 1951 South Pershing Road, Lincoln, Nebraska, 68502. Here to answer any available questions.
Thank you. Any proponents in the chambers? Seeing none, any opponents? Before I close the public hearing, Jason, just a quick question for you. This is my district, and I know it's a new application in a new location on 88th and Maple. If you want to just tell me a little bit about the operation and what you intend to provide.
So we are at 8807 Maple Street. We are going to provide just burger, wings, pulled pork, pulled chicken sandwiches, hand-cut fries, and then we're only going to offer just beer, wine by the glass, and that's it. So just a little eatery.
Great, sounds good. I look forward to trying it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Public hearing's closed. Second, roll call.
Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 17 is approved, 7-0. Item 18, to consider a Class I liquor license application for Pepper Jack's located at 2444 South 132nd Street.
Public hearing and vote on number 18 is today. We have the applicants by Zoom. We'll start with Robert Yendra. Go ahead, Robert. I think you're off mute now. If Robert, are you available? Okay, if not, we'll start with Amar. How's that?
Yes, I'm here to answer any questions. I'm with Pepper Jack's Grill, 11470 Bauman Avenue, Omaha, Nebraska.
Great, thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing's closed. Roll call.
Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Item 18 is approved, 7-0. Consent agenda. Any member of the City Council may cause any item placed on the consent agenda to be removed. Items removed from the consent agenda shall be taken up by the City Council immediately following the consent agenda in the order in which they were removed, unless otherwise provided by the City Council Rules of Order.
The public hearing on agenda items number 19 through 26 were held on July 13th. Roll call.
Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0.
Number 31 on the agenda has been requested to be removed, so we'll take that separately. First, we'll take public hearings on agenda items number 27 through 30 and 32 through 33 today. If you wish to address the City Council regarding these items, please come to the microphone, indicate the agenda item number you wish to address, identify yourself by name, address, and who you represent, and if you are a proponent or an opponent. Seeing none, public hearings are closed.
I'm sorry, did you say 32 will be separately?
31.
32 is now.
32 is now.
Mm-hmm. I closed the public hearing, but I'll recognize you if you want to speak on number 32.
Larry Storr, 5015 Lafayette Avenue, Omaha 68132. I'm all for friendship, equality, and things, but I had an experience at the Learning Community Council meeting the other day that makes me want to be against voting on this today. I'd like to see it postponed so that the city and the citizens can have a real discussion, a two-way discussion on race relations, because it is getting pretty bad in Omaha. At least I'm told that just about every day. I went to the Learning Community Council last week. Some of those same people that went there are here today. And I don't feel very friendly towards them because their rules are different. They start off with the main topic and there's no input to the citizens before it. Some of the people were allowed to shout, raise their arms in the air, interrupt people that were speaking that were on the opposite side of the question. These same people are wearing the same uniforms.
So Larry,
Black Lives, excuse me.
number 32 is
Okay.
proposed funding to step up job
Black
training
Lives
program.
Matters. I get offended when they do not stand up for the flag at the city council.
All right, well, that's not this agenda item, so I'll have you stand down now.
What?
Public hearing's closed. Is there a motion?
Americanism.
Mr. Harding, do you have you're recognized if your light's on.
That is anti-Americanism.
Sometimes I feel like we're all being goaded into responding, but I will, because this is sort of the step up job training work experience program. Mr. Story, you're interrupting, you're out of order, and you should probably be removed. As I was saying, this is for the step up job training and work experience program. This is actually the second half of what was previously approved, and therefore I know it's been moved for approval, and I'll second it.
Thank you. Roll call.
You could say.
It was on, what's that? On the consent agenda.
Mr. Harding has motioned. Is there a second?
No. She motioned for the consent agenda.
Okay.
I second it.
All right. Motion by Melton, second by Harding. Roll call.
Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 31, a resolution to approve the public overpass agreement with Union Pacific Railroad for the Farnham Street pedestrian overlook pier.
Public hearing and vote on number 31 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed. Roll call.
Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-0. Johnson abstains. Item 34, an ordinance to approve an amendment to the Fire and Emergency Services Agreement with the Millard Suburban Fire Protection District Number 1 is amendment of the whole requested by the Law Department.
The vote on number 34 is today. There's an amendment of the whole I would note for the council. Second, roll call.
Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 35, an ordinance to create Section 23-537 of Chapter 23 of the Omaha Municipal Code to create a 6% specialty pay for an executive deputy chief of police. Personnel Board recommends approval.
Motion and a second. Roll call.
Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 36, an ordinance to acquire private property for the I Street eastbound I-80 on-ramp to 102nd Street project.
The public hearing on number 36 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 37, an ordinance to acquire private property for the Ames Avenue, 85th Avenue to 87th Avenue Public Improvements Project.
Public hearing on number 37 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Before I close public hearing, I'll just note this is a project in my district that has a long, long history. As Councilmember Melton also knows, it was hers before mine. But this measure today will help bring that to a close in a positive way with the repaving of this segment of street. I'll close public hearing. Thank you.
Item 38, an ordinance to transfer a permanent easement and land to MUD to relocate facilities on city-owned property located near 11th and Nicholas Street.
Public hearing on number 38 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 39, an ordinance to approve a special agreement with the Iowa Department of Transportation for the maintenance of a section of Abbott Drive.
Public hearing on number 39 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 40, an ordinance to approve a major amendment to a mixed-use district development agreement for Candlewood Hills located southwest of 124th and Webster Plaza. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing on number 40 is today. Proponents, please.
Hi, Katie Underwood, 2111 South 67th Street. I'm the civil engineer on the project and happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Thanks, Katie. Any other proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 41, an ordinance to approve a major amendment to a mixed-use district development agreement for West Dodge Station located at 18101 Burt Street. Planning Board and Planning Department recommend approval.
Public hearing on number 41 is today. Proponents, please.
Yes, Mr. President, members of the council, Larry Jobin, 11440 West Center Road, appearing on behalf of Woodhouse Auto Family. With me today is Paul Check of Woodhouse Auto Families. This is a development on the northwest corner of 180th and Dodge, and they're looking to relocate their Porsche dealership to this location. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 42, an ordinance to approve the Blackstone Plaza Building Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Agreement.
Public hearing on number 42 is today. The applicant, Ms. Hadley.
Good afternoon, Bridget Hadley, City Planning, here to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any proponents on number 42?
H. Daniel Smith, 8712 West Dodge, to answer any questions you may have about this project.
Thank you, Mr. Smith.
That's
Any
it.
other oh, go ahead.
Thank you.
Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 43, an ordinance to approve an agreement with Brycer LLC for the Compliance Engine Solution System.
Public hearing on number 43 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 44, an ordinance to accept the quote from Axon Enterprises, Inc. for an additional 39 Axon body camera systems and 39 TASER 7 CEW units.
Public hearing on number 44 is today. Proponents, please. Welcome, Deputy Chief.
Deputy Chief Michelle Bang, Omaha Police Department, 505 South 15th Street, and I'm here to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any other proponents today? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 45, an ordinance to approve a contract with Clear Recovery for collection of delinquent account recovery services.
Public hearing on number 45 is today. Are there any proponents? Seeing none, any opponents? Public hearing is closed.
Item 46, Excel Grounds Management appeals rejection of their bid from June 30th, 2021 for the City of Omaha snow removal at OPD buildings.
First, we'll hear from the appellant here. Is anyone from Excel Grounds Management available today? They're the ones appealing this bid rejection. If they're not available, we'll move to the city if the city would like to speak to it. If not, we'll just have any questions from council members. Seeing none? Roll call.
Rowe. Bagley.
Aye.
Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Item 47, a resolution to approve the Warhorse Casino Omaha Tax Increment Financing Redevelopment Project Plan located at 6303 Q Street in an amount up to $17,500,000.
Thank you. The public hearing and vote on number 47 is today. I thought this might be why everyone was sticking around for the rest of the meeting. Given the volume of testimony we anticipate, we're going to use our light system today, as we do from time to time, to make sure everyone has a chance to speak and is heard on what they want to communicate. We'll have the presenters or the applicants have a chance to give a presentation, but then all proponents will have 3 minutes and all opponents will have 3 minutes, and then council members can ask questions as they see fit. Mr. Seaton.
Oh, yes, good afternoon. Don Seaton, Omaha City Planning Department. And I'm just going to kind of hit the highlights of this one. As you see, we have the development team here that'll give you a lot of details about the project. But the project site is a site of about 52.8 acres. It's a location of Horseman's Park Building and Track. The 45,000 square foot existing building at Horseman's Park will be thoroughly rehabbed. It'll also be substantially expanded with a 46,900 square foot addition. And there is, in addition to that, a clubhouse expansion of 20,600 square feet. So the new facility will be a casino, racing, and entertainment complex. And this comes with a sports bar, food hall, coffee shop, central bar area, gaming tables, gaming machines, live racing, simulcast racing, and a stage for live entertainment. There will also be about 1,430 parking stalls on the site. The developers will be providing more than $6 million in public improvements, most of which are to Q Street and infrastructure there. In fact, that $6 million has grown fairly rapidly on the developers. I think it's up to about $7.8 million now. So that's a very large portion of the TIF funds they're asking for. And this is older infrastructure that the city would likely need to be looking at itself eventually in the not too distant future. The developer is Warhorse Gaming Omaha LLC. It's a subsidiary of Ho Chunk Inc. That's the economic development arm of the Winnebago tribe of Nebraska. Lance Morgan is the president and CEO. The project has a total project cost of about $221 million. They're asking for $17,500,000 in TIF support. The project meets the required criteria of the city's TIF program. It's an appropriate land use for the area. I think we'll probably see some spillover development on the vacant and underutilized properties around the site. We ask for your approval.
Thank you. And the developer, please.
Good afternoon, Mr. President, City Council members. Jim Bouger, 10250 Regency Circle, here on behalf of Warhorse Casino. I have with me today from our team Lance Morgan, who's the CEO of Ho-Chunk Inc., Lynn McNally from Horseman's Park, Lou Frillman, who's a consultant for the project with Market Advisors, Matt Tondel with HDR, who's been leading the Q Street Improvements design portion of the project, Jessica Thomas from my office from Pansing Hogan, and Angel DeRoche from Ho-Chunk as well. So first of all, I'd like to thank Bridget and Don for all their hard work on this project. To date on the TIF application, as the council may recall, or at least the holdover council members from the last council, this project previously went through a community redevelopment area designation, CRA designation, which was approved by the city council unanimously on May 14th, I believe. This matter is actually, in some fashion, appeared before the council previously to get the CRA designation so that we could proceed with the TIF application. The project has been recommended for approval by the Planning Department. It was recommended for approval by the TIF committee, and we received a 7-0 vote from the Planning Board. So there is, to date, unanimous consent from the city and support, and we're appreciative of everybody at the city offices that have helped us not only with the TIF application, but we have some zoning matters and some public works issues to deal with in Q Street. So with that, I'm going to turn the next part of the presentation over to Lynn McNally, who's going to talk about what's going to happen and how this 62nd and Q Street is going to be transformed.
Good afternoon. Lynn McNally, 6303 Q Street. If you'll indulge me for a moment, I'd like to take you back a little bit and talk about not the new project, but who we are and where we're coming from. My members and the people who own this property are actually all of the people that lived, worked, and ran at Exarban. When Exarban closed because the riverboats opened in Council Bluffs, those people were effectively made homeless and without a place to work. So my membership took the revenue projections from simulcasting, got a loan, and got a piece of property on relatively short notice so that they could begin construction immediately so that they would not lose a year of racing the following year. It took quite a feat to get that done. This site is actually just down the road from Exarban, which is why it was important for them to build here. Unfortunately, the site is not pristine ground. It's actually a closed landfill. So there were limited uses for it. You certainly can't dig a basement on this property. But it served its purpose, and we've run here for 27 years successfully. It's definitely been a vital part of racing in Nebraska. Fast forward to November 3rd, the initiatives that we sponsored with Ho-Chunk passed overwhelmingly by the voters statewide, and Ho-Chunk immediately hired an architect and engineers to start working on the site. We had discussions about moving. Lance felt very strongly about staying within the Omaha city limits and convinced us to stay. So we decided to develop the project from there. If you'll look at the map, it's actually got an accommodation for around 1,450 parking spaces. We acquired property to the east of us from Hawkins. Hawkins appeared in support of this in the Planning Commission where it passed unanimously, and Hawkins continues to support this as our neighbor. If you look on the infield where the pink area is, that's where we're going to provide temporary parking while construction is going on in the main parking area. We've labeled these as phases, but they're really going to be happening pretty much simultaneously. Phase 1 is a remodeling of the existing building. Phases 2, 3, and 4 are expansion and extending out from the current clubhouse area. And then phase 5 would be actually going up on the new expansion for racing in particular, We're going to be building new steward stands and viewing areas for the horsemen, that kind of thing. If you actually take a look at what the final look will be, you'll notice that we've got a new entrance for the facility, which would allow us an additional ingress-egress, which is very important for emergency services, that kind of thing. And the thing that I'm most excited about as somebody who's here a lot is the expansion widening of Q Street. It's desperately needed on this road. If you try to travel this road at 8 a.m. or 5 p.m., you're going to be sitting there a while. It's kind of a bottleneck between 72nd and 60th Street, and I'm particularly proud of the fact that we'll be able to fast track these types of improvements for the neighborhood in general. I should also mention that at one point, we've had numerous problems with the water main in this area. As a matter of fact, the water main burst the day before live racing one year. And I can't say enough good things about Department of Water and Power for the city of Omaha. They came out, did the best they could to get us up and going for the live racing, but they had to put a Band-Aid on it. It was something that needed more extensive work, but they said, unfortunately, the infrastructure in this entire area is pretty old. So there was only so much they could do. If you'll take a look at what we're proposing, the tax increment financing would be used mostly for those kinds of improvements. It would be road improvements on Q Street, infrastructure improvements, sewer, water, those kinds of things that benefit the entire community. There's also not a sidewalk in front of our property, and so we'll be installing a sidewalk as well. I don't know how many are familiar with this particular area, but it's next to Little Papio, and so that main trails network is right down the road. So this sidewalk would actually connect to that trails area. In addition, we've had comments from the city of Omaha. They would like to see a water station and a bike station at this facility, which we're more than happy to provide. We're also talking to the city about, you have a powered bike program in the city that they don't have enough stations for, and so we'd be more than happy to provide that as well. So very proud of this project and what it can bring to the community, especially in this area. And I absolutely believe that if this wasn't happening there, that the infrastructure improvements that are necessary in this area, I really think that it would remain down on the list. City of Omaha, because of its extreme geographic size, you've got many urgent needs, especially with roads. So without this project, I think these citizens would be waiting for a very long time for these improvements to happen. I should also mention, we're between the initiative that we wrote and additional tax revenue. The city of Omaha itself will be looking at about $7.5 million a year from this project. And, that's going on far into the future. So I'm very happy to be a major tax contributor, very happy to be a major property tax relief contributor when these are up and running. Just very proud of this project in general. So really hoping that you see the benefits of this particular project and hoping that you vote in the affirmative. If you've got any questions, happy to answer them.
Thank you. Mr. Boozer, does that conclude the applicant's presentation?
Yeah, if I can take a few more minutes and maybe expand on Lynn's, the economic impact of the project. Jim Boozer, 10250 Regency Circle. So I guess this segues nicely with the mayor's presentation today, where fortunately our city, it appears that we're going to be able to offer some property tax relief, and this project itself will generate some substantial funds for the city, and we have submitted, I know I submitted Mr. Downing and some of the city council people, representatives, some of the statistics of the benefits from this project. So from an economic standpoint, there's 2,421 jobs projected from the site. With fully loaded benefits from those jobs, it's about $178 million a year. Under the casino initiative, the annual tax rebate back to the city is about $7.5 million a year. So there's a pretty good bang for the buck here, and that will last hopefully into perpetuity, assuming this project is successful and meets projections. The additional local sales tax is about $42,000 projected. Restaurant tax revenue, $290,000. Our federal tax burden will be approximately $20,700,000, and we have $1,250,000 in city permits and fees. As Lynn had alluded to, and I think it's an exciting opportunity for the South Omaha community. This development itself, I think, will spur additional development. I think the Milt site, while it's useful as a driving range, I think that with this project, I think you'll see some redevelopment there. The community redevelopment area was intentionally sized such that it would spur and create the opportunity for additional projects that could also take advantage of TIF and potentially enhance further the public infrastructure needs in this area, which are pretty desperate. So with that, I guess that's, there's just a lot of great benefits for capturing or recapturing revenue that's going over to Iowa today, and I think it's important that we try and move that over to Omaha as soon as possible. Lynn had touched on the TIF proceeds and what our use of the TIF proceeds are. Unlike a lot of projects, there's a broad range of what are called TIF eligible expenses. In this project, we have nearly $70 million of statutory TIF eligible expenses. We're asking for $17.5 million, which is from a project valuation standpoint about 7.9%. Most of the TIF projects that you see before you are somewhere between 12 and 15% of the project value. You'll see that the primary uses of TIF proceeds, we've segregated them. We worked with Don and Bridget from the finance department for city planning to segregate those that we thought were the most beneficial to our community and identified those. So this project, the TIF funds will be used for what we see as truly public benefits. So with that, I would just maybe add one additional comment, and that you may hear from maybe some of the opponents questioning, why does the casino need TIF funds? And so there's a but-for analysis that the TIF committee had to consider, that the city had to consider in recommending this project for approval. And just from an economic standpoint, and I think that Lance and Lynn and Lou who are with me today will confirm to you that the TIF, but for TIF being available, the project as it is presented today, would not have been feasible. Casinos themselves have a very unique investment profile. We're spending $220 million that is at-risk money. And so that's a tremendous investment above what the $80 million in valuation. So that you see this, there's a lot of machines and investment in marketing, investment in personnel that go into these projects that are highly unique and extraordinary. And both the equity partners and the banks that are willing to finance such projects are quite limited and demand some really extraordinary and unusual returns or potential return profiles to make a project viable. This project itself is located in a somewhat challenged area in our city as far as access and infrastructure. We've talked about 62nd and Q Street, the fact that it's in a former landfill. It's located, part of the site is actually in a floodplain, part of it's in a floodway, make it extremely challenging to develop. And so, but we're willing to make the investment in the public infrastructure to make this work. But we do need those funds, but for the TIF, this project would not likely have happened here. The developer had explored other sites outside of Douglas County as potential opportunities that you might be able to build a mile track. The Horsemen certainly would have supported that. Better and expanded racing facilities that would have been an opportunity. But Mr. Morgan and the Ho-Chunk partnership, part of this group, insisted that this be located in Omaha, that they really wanted to make this work in Omaha. They want to make a commitment to Omaha to not only make this project work, but to expand with additional private investment in private projects and really make the Ho-Chunk presence found in the city of Omaha. So it's really important to us, and it was really important to Lance and the Ho-Chunk representatives to make this work for the city of Omaha. So when we approached the city for a help that we needed to make it work in the city of Omaha, we worked very hard to work through the CRA process and the TIF process so that this project could indeed stay here and be here in the city. So with that, our group is happy to answer any questions after the further public testimony, and I thank you for your time today and your support of the project.
Thank you. That concludes the presentation by the applicants. We'll now move to our light system. As you may know, it goes from green, yellow to red, and we'll stick with our current mode of practice in this regard at 3 minutes. And we'll hear from proponents now. Any other proponents on number 47? Seeing none? Opponents, please. Please come down. Mayor Dobb.
Hal Dobb, 314 North 97th Court, and I'll always be pleased to have my address a matter of record for all of you. Mr. President, members of the council, I'm not sure I can handle this in 3 minutes, but I'll do my best.
And council members are free to call up folks if they want to have them expand upon their comments too.
Right. Yeah. I want to make it clear from the outset, ladies and gentlemen, that I am not here as an opponent to this application to in any way, shape, or form attempt to relitigate the gambling legalization debate. That's not why I'm here. But I have 3 points I would like to make. And we're not naive about this. There's going to be a casino, and it's going to be built there. Our objection today is different. We oppose the notion that the taxpayers of this community should be forced to subsidize a casino project, particularly where its sponsors spent $3 million or $6 million heralding this opportunity by virtue of amending our state's constitution, and actually suggested that they'd be providing tax relief and not net tax loss, which is what this, at least over the first 10 years, will be at some point, tax reduction. We believe this council, as guardians of the integrity of the vital TIF, tax financing program in Omaha, should deny the application no matter what. But our procedural request today is simply that you assure yourselves that you are satisfied that the planning department has done an adequate job of concluding that this project is even eligible for TIF support in the first place. As the council is well aware, it is a mandatory requirement under state law that a TIF applicant must prove that their project would not be feasible without financial public support, the TIF subsidy. We asked the planning department to produce us the entire TIF application, including the economic feasibility analysis. They chose to produce it only in substantially redacted form. So the public has been denied the opportunity to examine and analyze the economic feasibility showing of the applicant for the $17.5 million public subsidy. The argument was made that it was proprietary. Well, now, just how much does that stretch one's credibility here when you suggest that there may be some other competitor that has a track or space in Douglas County? All other TIF applications are made public. The light of day shines in. Why shouldn't it shine in on this one? So that we understand the baselines, the assumptions upon which all these projections were handed are supposed to materialize. It's simply a question of fact. And there ought to be some sunlight, some visibility, some accountability in future days, and you won't get that unless you know upon what baselines and what economic data these assumptions are based. So we'd suggest that we're told that there can be TIF. Well, the planning department was asked if it does not own the land, which is in turn owned by a nonprofit entity, may be eligible for TIF in the first place. We submit to the council that you should have to make sure that that information is disclosed and the logic of that is made public. That's the issue of transparency. Now, the second point I want to make real quickly is I trust the legal department, and you all have satisfied yourselves, but in reading documents, we weren't able to get a hold of the operating agreements, the agreements in full with respect to the joint venture that evidently is proposed, since the applicant is not the landowner. And normally TIF flows from the ownership of the land.
So Mayor Dodd, we're at time, but I want you to summarize your comments. I think we'll come back to.
Is there an agreement, or will there be in the TIF agreement, if it's approved, that the tribes waive sovereign immunity so that the city can always audit the books of the casino? And that can never be a defense to the transparency that the city and the taxpayers are entitled to have. Has that matter been addressed? Is there a written agreement proposed to assure that there is no assertion of tribal immunity with respect to examining the finances of this operation that's being granted this tax subsidy? The last point I'll make very quickly, and it comes to the issue of credibility. And I'm a strong supporter of TIF and believe that if it's used properly, it's a vital tool for promoting economic development in our city. And so I raise these 4 quick points. This application would hand opponents of TIF one of the best arguments that they've ever had. For if a casino is somehow economically a $200+ million economic development is infeasible unless they get tax-paid subsidies, then we've established a new standard that renders the requirement, the but-for requirement, meaningless. The core statutory requirement for TIF would be gutted, and citizens would have more reason than ever to doubt the integrity of the TIF system. Transparency, that's what we're calling for today. To lay this over and require transparency, the complete disgorgement of the documents, the economic studies, so that we can test them, see them, find out what their baselines are, and determine, in fact, whether they are creditable. I urge you to deny the application, as others may describe today, and that it's clear from the face of what we've attempted to learn, but were denied the ability to read and learn, that there is a problem with this application being in the name of the Warhorse Casino and not the owner of the land. Perhaps there are joint venture agreements, perhaps there are operating agreements, other documents that you have seen or reviewed that establish a link to the visibility and viability of TIF. But I think at a minimum, I urge you to delay it and lay the matter over until the issues of transparency, full disclosure, and the question of the waiver of sovereign immunity are resolved. Thank you.
So I appreciate those points, and I wanted to make sure you had a chance to make them. We did just blow our plan of 3 minutes per testifier, so I want to honor that with other testifiers too.
People here, so we won't take
No problem. Can I see a show of hands who intends to testify as opponents? Okay, no problem. Thank you. And your name and address for the record, please.
Okay, I'm Pat Lunger. I live at 12213 Westwood Lane, and I'm the director of Gambling with a Good Life for the past 26 years. We have opposed expanded gambling in the state of Nebraska successfully. But 25 of those years, though they were successful, 2020 election changed all of that forever. So I'm not here to debate whether the negative effects of this casino will have on our economy and on our families and businesses. But what I am here today is to ask you not to make this damage worse. Gambling interests sold the lie of property tax relief with $6 million of false advertisement. Unfortunately, the voters believe the lies. The gambling industry has an insatiable appetite for more and more money. They have boasted that millions of dollars from hardworking Omahans will flow through that Warhorse Casino. Yet that's not enough. They came here today asking for $17.5 million to help them build their $220 million project. What an insult. What nerve. I would like to read you a quote by Brendan Bussman, Director of Government Affairs for Global Markets, in the Omaha World Herald on June the 3rd in 2021. He writes, "I was surprised to hear of a casino requesting a tax incentive. In my 17 years in the industry, I can only recall one other casino project in Las Vegas that had a tax break asked for. Officials basically laughed them out of the room," said Bussman. "Casinos typically only ask for approval to operate in a city and nothing more." He said he was pleased that Nebraskans want to gamble and will soon spend their money in the state, but he said he found it hypocritical that the developers are asking for tax relief after they helped to sell the constitutional gambling amendment on the idea that it would provide property tax relief. He concluded, "I think it's disingenuous to ask for your own property tax relief in the same process," he said. So I ask you today to vote no on this proposal, or at the very least, postpone the vote until the council carefully reviews all of the documentation submitted. I believe if that is done, you will come to the conclusion that this project does not meet the criteria for TIF money. TIF money used to build a casino has never been approved, and it sets a precedent for the nation. So please, do not make Omaha the laughingstock of the nation.
Thank you. Next opponent, please. And you can turn the light system off. Yeah.
I am Jack Heidel, 5010 Nicholas Street, Omaha 68132. And really, this will just be really very short. Does a gambling casino that's going to rake in millions of dollars have a need for a public subsidy? And it's hard, I mean, it's a laughing matter. I mean, it doesn't for sure. And I would just like to repeat what I think you all know on the council. Part of the resolution that you'll be voting on here says, whereas as the redevelopment project would not be economically feasible and would not occur at the development project site without the use of TIF. As the redevelopment project would not be economically feasible and would not occur at the redevelopment site without the use of TIF. In other words, you'll be voting that it would not be economically feasible and would not occur. That's crazy. So I ask you to just, that's my point, and I hope you'll either oppose this or postpone it. Thank you.
Thank you. Other opponents?
Dale Monsell, 6312 North 68th Street, Omaha. What I have here is a drafted editorial article that I submitted to the World Herald about a month ago. And they declined it. I've decided to just read it off here. This article was critical of Ho-Chunk's request for TIF money for their Warhorse Casino. It was titled, "No TIF Justification for Casinos." A rather surprising development in casino gambling installation in Nebraska is the Omaha City Planning Board vote to approve tax incremental financing for the Ho-Chunk's planned casino at Horseman's Park. Casino gambling has always proved a net financial drain in any state where it has gained entry. There is no reason to believe it will be any different here. It should be noted that Ho-Chunk is now planning to spend $220 million on the development of their Omaha-based casino, and the same in Lincoln. Apparently, the board was swayed by the illusion that the eventual casino paid taxes will reduce the taxes paid by the state's citizens. This was also argument in the recent passing of the gambling petitions. Lance Morgan, CEO of the Economic Development Arm of Ho-Chunk of Nebraska Winnebago Tribe, in his June 12th World Herald article, capably points out the past injustices suffered by the Native people in this country. The question to be considered: does the past denials to these people now justify parasitic casino operations in the state? Now the tribal interests are also planning to present their TIF request to the Omaha City Council. Hopefully the council will be more discerning than the planning board. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other opponents today? Seeing none, public hearing's closed. I think we're all right. Ms. Melton, you're recognized.
Thank you. Well, and I just want to say first, I just want to call clear that in most of our TIF applications, because sometimes, or at least earlier today, I think some things were said that were not true. There's a laundry list of expenses that TIF can be used for. And typically, we actually see TIF at anywhere from 10 to 15% of the project. And this is about 7. My concern, I have the same concerns, actually, that I think that Gail, I didn't catch your last name, that the gentleman that just testified last, I don't think that we should subsidize in the building of the casino. So I went back and I've looked at the specific costs for this TIF. And when I look at the costs for this TIF, they are on, site work is $8.2 million, which is I believe the widening of Q Street to 3 lanes, the sewer and the water, and then architecture, engineering, and civil engineering for all of these public improvements. I would not be supportive of a TIF if it included anything that that was going to support the building of the casino. I really wouldn't, because I think I agree with the opponents. But I see that on your own. So if you would have come to us for TIF for the 70 million, which of eligible TIF, I absolutely would have said no. But I think what the casino did do is look at that and say, we're only asking for TIF for the public improvements we're making. I do have to agree with some of the opponents, though, that the initiative was stated to all of us for the vote that this would help reduce our taxes. Well, we could, and although this isn't increasing our taxes by any means, and by the way, the casino, you're gonna be giving, or the city is going to be seeing an additional $7.5 million per year in revenue rebates to the city, an additional taxes, if you include sales taxes, restaurant taxes, and the like, just from the casino, you're close to $350,000 per year just from the casino. And we will see a significant increase in property tax revenue in the future. But I have to say, I think that the opponents make some good points. And although I'm extremely supportive of the amounts that you've chose, because they're improvements that whether you go to the casino or not, the community is going to use. So when I drive down Q Street, I'm not stuck, like you said. And it may not be that I'm going to the casino. I might be visiting somebody that lives there. I don't live around there, but I actually do frequently drive through there from my way home from work. And so they are improvements that the entire community will see. I agree, it's a little hard for me to fathom that it wouldn't be built, but for this, however, I do think that those are extraordinary expenses that the city is asking you to incur for this project that are public improvements. So I guess what I'm saying is this is the first I've heard of some of the other things, the agreements and things like that. So I don't know if Mr. Bucer wants to address any of these things, or if the city wants to address what the requirements are for TIF in regards to agreements and whether the applicant be the developer or the owner, because I think those are some good points that quite frankly have never been brought up in a TIF application to my knowledge before since I've been on council. So I didn't know if anybody would like to address some of that.
First of all, Ms. Melton, Jim Bouger, 10250 Regency Circle, and I think Ms. McNally would like to say a couple things as well, but there were a couple points that were made as far as access to information by Mr. Dobb. There was a FOIA request made by Mr. Dobb's firm, by David Lopez, and that matter has been settled. The City of Omaha, and I guess I would defer to the City Attorney and Mr. Indenbosch, who processed the FOIA request, but that FOIA request was made. The city turned over the information. The hush firm then appealed that decision as far as the information to the Attorney General's office, which is the appropriate process. And the Attorney General's office ruled that the city acted appropriately in turning over that information. So the city has the information. The TIF committee had access to the information. The planning department had access to the information. The city's made a recommendation for approval of the TIF on the basis of the information that was provided. And I won't state that I would say that it was legally done, but I assume that was the determination of your law department, that everything has been handled appropriately from a legal perspective. So with that, I would just, if you would want to inquire of the city attorney as to the appropriateness of the information that was turned over, I would encourage that, and that the appropriate processes were filed or were followed to provide that information as required by statute. So with that, the other one point that I would make is we're not actually taking money. TIF, again, it's the concept is we're not actually, TIF is not taking money. Today there's a valuation of about $1 million for the real estate. So that $1 million, which is the base valuation, will continue to pay the real estate tax. It's the incremental value that pays back the actual loan, the TIF loan, of which we personally guarantee, and we have an obligation to pay back, whether the project is successful or not, whether the improvements are valued, whether or not. We don't get that benefit unless the project is actually successful. And after the 15 years is up, there will be $80 million worth of valuation and a huge jump in property taxes. So I just wanted to make sure that there wasn't a misconception that we're taking money or that we're getting money for nothing or that we're taking something from a taxpayer base. So thank you.
Councilwoman Melton, I just wanted to add that as Jim mentioned, this was subject to a FOIA request that was appealed, and the Attorney General.
I think I'm past okay. that part of the FOIA request, and it was appealed. So
well, I would like to tell you that part of that was submitted that was protected as confidential information was our development agreement. That is an agreement that Lance and I both signed, and it includes it's a full partnership between our two entities, including a long-term land contract. So I do feel that it was an appropriate submission for this application. We're full partners all the way. And, Mr. Dobb is asserting that he's not trying to relitigate November 3rd. I would disagree with that because the whole basis of saying that these are somehow Indian casinos and that they're not going to turn over financial information to the state is absolutely and completely ridiculous. That was their whole campaign, was that these are concealed Indian casinos. That is absolutely not true. These are commercial casinos subject to all of the same checks and balances that every other kind of business like that is subject to. I have seen the rules and regs myself. We are required to turn over all of our financial information on a regular, timely basis. They have to be reported monthly back to the department, to the Gaming Commission, which we fully intend to do. This will be open and transparent as to the money coming in, the money going out. And the main reason is 20% of this revenue is going into the property tax relief fund. There is a state interest in making sure that the money is going where it's supposed to go. Additionally, there's a city and county interest in making sure the money goes where it's supposed to go, because you guys are getting a huge chunk of that tax revenue back. So we are going to be fully compliant with everything, and that's just a red herring. It's just to try and misdirect the issue.
Okay, thank you. So what city attorney is here to, are you doing this? Sorry, I wasn't sure if your Bernard was here and waiting in the wings somewhere.
Matt Kuzi, City of Omaha Law Department. I've spoken to Mr. Indenbosch, and I'm familiar with the issue. There was a public records request made that was reviewed by the law department, and it was determined that some stuff was turned over, but other stuff was withheld, as it is statutorily allowed to be withheld under the public records law. That decision was contested to the Attorney General's office. The Attorney General's office agreed with the decision of the law department in that the materials that were being requested fell under the public records exception, so they remained withheld.
So my question would be, though, were all the documents and agreements reviewed by not only our TIF committee, but our legal department, to ensure that whoever is the owner, these agreements are in place and they are proper for a TIF allotment?
Matt Kuzi, City of Omaha Law Department, it's my understanding that yes, the agreements were reviewed to ensure that they met the requirements, the city's requirements and the state statute requirements for TIF. I believe they were reviewed by Ms. Taylor, who sits on the TIF committee as a law department's representative.
Okay. And is there anything about, they don't need to waive any kind of sovereign immunity in order for the city to be able to audit, or these state audits? Do you know?
I can't really comment on that particular issue. I think that's something that's beyond necessarily the city's interest. But again, we've had issues before, questions before about when the city has dealings with another entity, or it's not really a contract, but has deals with another entity, that the city does get access to that information. We can't be prohibited from having access to that information. And has also been previously said, there are going to be state statute and regulations regarding oversight as well. That would obviously be above anything the city would be interested in.
And I know, and I may be asking you something that it's not something that the city attorney would necessarily need to know, but the casinos that were passed, they're considering themselves, they just said, a commercial casino versus an Indian casino?
Correct.
So those are two different types of entities, and are they both allowed under the new state statute?
The law department's not in a position to comment on that, given that the city is not involved in the casino business.
I could respond to that. Lynn McNally, 6303 Q Street. I have the dubious distinction of probably being the only attorney in the state of Nebraska who specializes in gaming, because up until now, no one else cared. Indian gaming falls under federal law. It's class 3 gaming. In order to have Indian gaming in the state of Nebraska, and I'm going to check with my law professor on this, you would need a class 3 gaming compact with the state of Nebraska signed by the governor, correct? So as of now, class 3 gaming under the Indian Gaming Regulatory Act is not allowed in the state of Nebraska because there is no active gaming compact. So the only casinos that would be allowed under the constitutional amendment would be mainstream or commercial casinos.
Therefore, regardless of whatever status Ho-Chunk may be,
Correct.
Or whatever their relationship with the Winnebago tribe is,
correct. They have to comply with all state statutes in disclosure and reporting.
Okay.
And I might add that we are the holder of the racing license, meaning the Nebraska Horsemen. So we are actually the ones who have to comply with all of these statutes, regulations, rules, everything. As a matter of fact, I spent most of my time in front of the Gaming Commission on Friday. And so even if you want to try to make the argument that somehow this is an Indian casino, which is laughable to me, the holder of the license is the Nebraska HBPA.
And you get your license through the state of Nebraska?
Correct. Yes, I do.
Okay.
Yes.
And forgive me, but the
Yes,
casino
I-
and the gaming is something that's new to me.
Same
I
thing.
might be a lawyer, but I,
That's okay.
didn't even study in law school.
That's-
So I just want to be clear of how this works, because to the majority of us, it could look like.
Yes, totally
It
understandable.
could look like you're coming in.
Yes.
You're going to get us to approve this, and then you're going to go hide behind maybe the Indian tribe and say you can't check us out,
Absolutely
you can't
not.
do anything.
You know where to find me. And in addition, all of my members, as I said before, are people who raced and ran at Exarban. These are people who live here. These are people who love this community. They're interested in this community. We have no intention of running for our financial obligations. As a matter of fact, we'd like to get these paid back in a timely fashion so that we continue to brag about how we're a property tax contributor and payer.
Well, that brings me to another point where you said we'd like to get this paid even sooner. Our TIF applications are 15 years.
Mhm.
However, you can pay those off sooner.
We can absolutely have that conversation. I would just like to be able to show how we're contributing to the community. And I think that once we're fully open and functioning, you're going to see those taxes coming back to you, and you're going to be very happy that we are a member of this community, and you're not continuing to send all of your citizens' money across the river to Council Bluffs. I think you're going to be very happy with that outcome.
Thank you. And could I call Jim Buser up just one more time? And the only reason is because I'm going to just have him clarify some specific TIF questions that I know he's kind of an expert at. And again, the casino is going to be, we have this loan, and we've gone through this a number of times, and I know Mr. Storrs left the room.
We lost an opponent.
But you're going to be paying, the casino is going to be paying the same amount that they would be paying in property tax relief. It's just going to go to pay off the loan that they're taking out to do public improvements.
Jim Bouger, 10250 Regency Circle, that is correct, Ms. Melton, yes. The current real estate taxes, those don't change, so yes, so it's just the incremental value. That increase is what is used to pay back the loan, yes.
And so if that's paid back early, the amount that they're paying is actually the same. They're not saving money over the next 15 years necessarily, other than they're basically, we're allowing them to fund their public improvements, to widen Q Street, do the other public improvements, and then pay that loan back over a period of time before they start paying the property taxes back. Is that correct?
Yeah, so there's indulge me for a minute. So there's two ways that most project developers will go out and get a separate loan based on the TIF note and the commitment to build the project. And then that TIF loan by the bank or whatever financial institution may be bonded, that loan is secured by the TIF note and a personal guarantee from the casino. So if the casino doesn't pay back that money, okay, they'd have a personal guarantee with the bank, and they'd have to pay it out of pocket. So if the project never got built and you don't have the incremental tax revenue, that they would be responsible for that out of pocket. Now, most of the TIF loans are structured such that they will be paid back, not after the term of the TIF, the 15 years, but certainly within the 15 years. And if there's an accelerated valuation, meaning that the project develops a little bit faster, then you get additional tax revenue sooner, which helps pay back the note sooner. Or if the valuation goes above and beyond where the projected valuation is at, the TIF note will get paid back sooner because there'll be additional taxes that come in. So generally, and that just takes it back onto the tax rolls again sooner if the TIF note does get paid back sooner. So I don't know if that's the question that you were asking, but
Right, and you don't necessarily get to control that. I mean, if the valuation comes in higher and you're paying more, that loan gets paid off sooner.
The county takes care of that issue. They set the valuations on the project. We do have a minimum valuation that we need to reach, but sometimes we don't encourage it necessarily as developers, but sometimes projects get valued more over time, particularly, just because there's an equalization issue there from whatever the facilities are. So.
Okay, and thank you. And I think I've asked all the questions that that I have to ask at this time. I'll let the other members of council speak.
Thank you. Mr. Palermo, you're recognized. And I'm informed Mr. Kuzi would like to speak, if that's okay with you.
I did want to answer one of Ms.
Okay.
Melton's questions. Matt
Please-
Kuzi,
please
City-
do, Law. Yeah.
Matt Kuzi, City of Omaha Law Department. The fine lawyers up in the law department are watching this and are providing me with additional information. One is, Ms. Melton asked about the information and whether we'd be entitled to the information. And our standard agreements always provide for financial review. It's actually required by law. And when redevelopment agreements are negotiated, it's standard language that we put in there that we can get whatever information or data or access to information that we want, particularly when it's required by law. So when the law department works these redevelopment agreements out, that type of information or that type of access to information is incorporated in the agreements. I just wanted to provide Ms. Melton and the council with a complete answer rather than a partial one.
Ready? Okay. Thank you, Mr. President. Councilmember Melton, thank you for them questions. Now, I don't have to ask them, but what I do want to say is thank you to those that are here with Warhorse. When we talk about an underutilized area, like we know that we have here along Q Street, sometimes you ask, well, does the council member know the area? Well, I know the area very well, having lived in the area, work in the area, and attend church in the area. There's some parcels around there that really need some help. And you can say TIF is needed or TIF is not needed. But if you're like me, November 3rd was, November 3rd was very good. Because I got tired of going across the bridge to a party or a function or to see friends. And every single time I went there, I see Nebraska plates. And we have a plan here, a project that didn't have to be built where it's proposed to be built. And I didn't want to have to go to another county to see these same plates and think, well, we could have. Because if you have kids and you've ever visited the facilities or baseball fields or whatnot across the way in Iowa, they're very, very nice, and they should be here. So whether you like this or not, and you talk about overreach, like I said in pre-council, city, county, and state overwhelmingly approved for this gambling in Nebraska. So when we talk about this project and we talk about the tools that are available to the developer, and we talk about the jobs that will be created in this area, where this is the neighborhood where people will jump at these jobs, 520 jobs. It's great. It's great. So I want to say thank you to those that are Warhorse that are here sticking through this, and hopefully we'll get to see this through. Mr. Seaton, I do have a question for you, I believe, or maybe Ms. Hadley. Okay, oh yeah, Don, right? And I've asked this before, but I'm gonna ask it again. We know the process of how this finally gets to the city council. Planning board. Well, first of all, there was a CRA that we heard that was approved, but it went to the planning board, and I believe that vote was 7-0 as well. And then there's a TIF committee. Can you tell me who is on this TIF committee?
Yes, it's city staff, primarily department heads. There's a total of 9 members. If I start listing them off by memory, I'll probably miss somebody, but we have the planning director, the finance director, Bob Stubbe with the Public Works Department, Jennifer Taylor with the Law Department. We also have Kevin and Troy Anderson, the Andersons from the Mayor's Office. Bridget's a voting member of the TIF committee. And I'd like to also cover something that I heard earlier, and that's that I want to reassure the council that we dealt with this project the same as we deal with all the other TIF projects. They all have confidential information. Nothing was redacted or withheld here that we don't withhold from other TIF applications. We treated it the same as all the other cases.
Yeah, and you beat me to it, because that's where I was going.
And yes, the confidential information, we have categories, and we keep it separate from the rest. We do not publish that online. Anything that goes to you or the planning board gets published online. But it's more than just the law department that looks over the confidential information. Bridget and I look it over, and it goes to all the TIF committee members as well.
Okay, thank you. And that's where I was going when I asked. These are the same employees of the city of Omaha who answer our questions every single day, and they answer them directly and with facts. We believe what they say. So I felt like there was a little bit of question in the planning or employees or the process or maybe the TIF committee, and I took offense to that.
No.
And I want to say that I heard that, and I don't for 1 second believe that this TIF was looked at any different than any other TIF we received. Now keep in mind, we have TIF on the agenda every single week, or just about every single week.
I appreciate your question. I'm glad you called me up because I was kind of sitting there fidgeting, listening to this, because I wanted you to be aware that we do deal with these all the same way. Things that are confidential are things like a purchase agreement for land. The organizational documents are confidential. A lot of these projects come with a marketing study, and the developers will pay big money for a marketing study. Why should that become public and published so that it's free to other competitors? And that's the case in this as well. But the categories of proprietary information are the same across all of our TIF applications, and we treat them all the same in terms of the financial information for this project, the project cash flow. As you know from looking at the online materials and what's in your packet, which is also online, the project cash flow is published. The return on investment calculations are published, and the TIF spreadsheet, where we calculate how much TIF the project can support. That spreadsheet is in your packets and is also published.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to ask you about that, so thanks for naming off those members. And again, thank you to you and planning and everybody else that took part in this process. I appreciate your hard work. Again, this is in my district. We will welcome it proudly with the jobs that it will create. And again, it's disheartening to drive across the bridge and see these plates and just to think, what if? And I don't think, there's a couple lights behind me, but it's my district, so hopefully nobody takes offense. I'm going to motion to approve.
Thank you.
I second.
There's a motion and a second. Mr. Harding, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. Couple points. One, I'm glad Mr. Kuzi just pointed out and reminded us all that this is for the tax increment redevelopment project plan, not the agreement. The agreement will come back to us in its final form with the points that he mentioned that would be included in that document. That's one. The other is that, and I think it was, I'll ask it in a different way, but this application, Don, if you'd like to come back up, you certainly may, but this application in its unredacted form was reviewed by all of the TIF committee, correct?
Don Seaton, City Planning, yes, the entire TIF committee received both the part that was published online that you have in your packets and all the confidential information.
Right,
the
and
entire
so
9.
the information that was distributed, both, as you said, online to us and in our packets or online for the public, and what was given as part of the FOIA request was that information that was deemed at first by the city to be confidential or proprietary information, and then when asked for that, I guess, further by appealing, and the Attorney General for the state of Nebraska backed the city and said that that was appropriate in the form it was given out. correct?
That's my understanding. Check with the city attorney, but I believe it was appealed to the Attorney General. What we kept as proprietary and confidential, the Attorney General upheld, I believe. I didn't actually see what was released to the applicants under the FOIA. There's emails and other information that all filtered through the city attorney's office, and they determined what was released. But basically what you're saying, yes, that's all correct.
Okay. All right, thank you, Don. I guess the other questions I had too have been asked and responded to, but I was hoping that maybe Jennifer Taylor was here, and Mr. Fansel, unfortunately, I'm gonna ask you to answer this question because you answered it this morning in another meeting, and it was your recollection of how Jennifer Taylor from the law department addressed the but-for question. So would you kind of respond to the but-for question as it relates to the public improvements?
Sure. Yeah, Dave Fanslow, City Planning Director. We had a lot of conversation about this application, both at the TIF committee level and obviously at Planning Board. Closely engaged with the law department on a number of those questions, and without putting words in Jennifer's mouth, what I recall her saying is that her legal opinion is that it met the but-for clause because but for the TIF financing, we wouldn't be getting the project or the public improvements, more importantly, I think that was your question, at this location without it.
Okay, thank you. And then, Mr. Bouger, if you please. My phone went to sleep just a second. I need to call this back up. Could you put it back up on the screen? You had the uses of TIF.
Can't quite get it on there.
Okay, so now this appears to be a little bit different than the one maybe that you had distributed on Monday. Is that correct?
Yes, Jim Bouger, 10250 Regency Circle, and the only difference is that the
offsite.
I'm sorry, the offsite public improvements was 6.8 when we initially submitted our application, and Matt Tindall can address the reasons why the estimates have gone up, but they've now are at $8.3 million. And part of that is some additional public improvements that have been requested as part of our approval process. Part of it is cost. Part of it is just having better numbers as the final plans were developed and approved by the Public Works Department.
But the request for the amount of TIF is still the same, correct?
Still the same.
Okay, so if it's still 17.5, and now the TIF eligible expenses that you're showing in this table, and we know there are actually additional expenses that would be TIF eligible, but you're showing a $20 million number, and mostly because of the increase in the off-site public improvement. So I assume a lot of that's associated with Q Street.
That is correct.
So what about that $3 million gap?
The $3 million gap.
Well, but you're asking for 17.5, and you're showing now because of the increased improvements on the offsite costs escalating from 6 million approximately to 8.3.
Sure.
So first dollars go toward the offsite public improvements?
We pay that out of pocket. I mean,
okay.
It becomes a private cost. I just wanted, again, just to illustrate, we tried when we worked with Mr. Seaton and Ms. Hadley on trying to identify what are the true public improvements here. What can we come before the council and the city and say, these are public improvements, and what is that number? What does that look like? And so that's how we got to the 17.5. So we're going to eat the additional costs. We're not going to ask for more TIF money for those because the costs have increased from what we asked for. But it's just a categorization. So again, I didn't adjust. I could have moved some of the costs down below to what we didn't ask for.
Right. So that was, thank you for answering that. I just wanted to make sure that the it was understood that the ask for TIF is not increasing because the costs for some of the public improvements have increased.
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. Yeah. Okay. Before I give up the mic, Jennifer Taylor, I think, is in the room now, and rather than having Mr. Fanslow act as her proxy, I'll let her address the question.
Good afternoon, Jennifer Taylor, City Law Department.
Oh, I assumed you, okay, so we were asking, we had a conversation about, Mr. Fanslow had kind of recounted his memory of what you had based the argument for the but-for on the TIF, and but-for the reason for the public improvements, and if you would expand on that.
Correct, and I did not hear Mr. Fanslaw's answer because I was in the elevator on my way down.
Okay.
But I think at the committee level, what we discussed as far as whether or not this project would proceed except for the use of tax increment financing is that I think the size and the scope of this project would not necessarily proceed without the use of tax increment financing, and the installation of these public improvements would not occur without the benefit of tax increment financing. So whether or not a project would occur here, I don't think you would have the one of the scope, size, the entertainment venues, and all of the additional things that come, as well as the casino gaming project, would not occur, and very little, if any, of the public improvements would occur.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Very consistent with what Mr. Fanslow recounted, so. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. Mr. Rowe, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President. I wanted to weigh in on this. I've been a proponent of TIF. I've campaigned on it. I think it's a great tool, great development tool, and I'm a positive on TIF. And I'm a positive on this project. I like the looks of it. I like the use of the land, everything about it. Where I'm having trouble, and I'm having a real struggle. And let me preface it too. I trust our staff. I trust our departments, and I know they've looked at this. I've studied these 67 pages inside and out. I'm trying to come up with a reason that I should vote yes for this. And I remember I signed the petition to put it on the petition. I remember standing in the parking lot of the lumberyard, signing the petition, said, yes, the people should have the right to make this determination. Now, I can't remember if I voted yes or no on the ballot. That's just because I'm 66 years old. But I am having a hard time with this. The but-for does bother me. I mean, there's a whole lot of, the return on investment, there's a whole lot of things that bother me about it. And I just think my neighbors, when I talk to my constituents and I talk to my neighbors, and I've been talking to them for the last couple of weeks on this topic, they are okay with the project. They like it. They'd rather spend their entertainment dollars in Omaha than go to Council Bluffs, no question about it. But they do have they are having trouble with understanding why we should rebate back tax dollars to pay for those infrastructure costs that are going to benefit the development. And I think it's going to be a wildly successful development. I think it's going to do really well. But I just wanted to weigh in. I wanted to let my opinion be known and express it that way. Thanks.
Thank you. Mr. Bagley, you're recognized.
Thanks, Mr. President. My colleagues asked a lot of questions that I was going to ask, so I guess just to reiterate, the FOIA request that was made was settled with the Attorney General ruled in the city's favor. Is that correct?
Are you directing that question to the law department?
Somebody that can answer that for me.
Matt Kuzi, City of Omaha Law Department. The matter was appealed. The decision of the law department to withhold information, as you've already heard, that's proprietary, confidential, which is allowed under the public records exceptions. That decision was affirmed by the Nebraska Attorney General's office when the parties requesting it brought that matter to their attention. So at this point, that process has concluded.
Okay. My second question, Councilmember Melton always does a great job of walking through the process, and if I was to understand, writing my notes and hearing correctly, that TIF is only used for the public improvements and not the construction of the casino. Is that correct? I don't know who I direct that to, Public Works or law. Is that correct?
Bob Stubbe, Public Works. I'm live. So I'm going based off of the information that was provided by Mr. Bouger that indicates that there's about $20 million of TIF eligible expenses. If I recall correctly, about 16 million of that is incorporated into the Q Street improvements, the water, gas, and electricity associated with, and sewer associated with that. So if we talk specifically about Q Street, our staff reviews with the development team, and in this particular case, would have been HDR, to look at the amount of traffic that's going to be generated by this particular development. And then based on that amount of traffic, we look at what improvements need to be made in that particular corridor, and that's part of the reason why that it was determined to come up with a 3-lane section that allows for turning movements to go into the casino because of the increased traffic. We look at the impact at not only 60th Street intersection, but also at the 72nd Street intersection. And so all of those types of improvements that are incorporated into that $8.3 million have been actually reviewed by city staff. Now granted, when we get closer into the design of the improvements, we will also provide additional input relative to what's being proposed and designed, and then we will actually end up having to sign off on that improvement to allow for those improvements within Q Street. Hopefully that answered your question.
Thank you. That's all I have, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Melton?
Yes, well, I just think that we allowed, I think that there was somebody from the opponent's team that was asking to come down to clarify something. Mr. Dobb, did you want to come down and clarify?
Like that opportunity. Thank you, Ms. Melton. Hal Dobb, 314 North 97th. The first thing is, in the comments I made, I said you should satisfy yourselves of the efficacy of the application. I was very careful from the beginning not to cast aspersions in any direction on anyone. The reason is I don't know, because I haven't seen those documents. I presume that none of us are economists and that you've all read all the documents. Councilman Rowe, you said you read the 67 pages. You'll know then that with TIF it's 40.45 and without TIF it's 0.68. On a $240 million project, it stretches one's mind to think that big a business with hundreds of millions of dollars rolling through the register, that net return is sufficient to pass the but-for test. But how do I know if some independent economic analysis isn't made of the redacted, confidential report on the economics of this project handed to the city to look at if it wasn't tested by equally independent, competent analysis? And that means you can defend TIF then, and it's not blemished by the suspicion of why is this all being kept so secret? Why is not the application for tax subsidy being scrutinized in a way that tests the assumptions upon which all the numbers you've been given and many other well-intended people have looked at, but they're not experts on that kind of analysis. And so it would seem to me, in a first of its kind, first impression matter, that you would take a step of looking at it more closely. Secondly, the Attorney General only said the city had the right to redact. They did not look at the underlying documents to make a judgment on the rightness or the wrongness of the redactions themselves. Make it very clear, it was a procedural decision the Attorney General's office made. They didn't look at the substance of the argument we could have taken to court but chose not to. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Harding?
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. Bouger, if you'll indulge me. To be fair, not every single dollar of TIF goes just into Q Street. There are some site improvements that benefit from this, but a lot of those are associated with water, gas connections, internal roads, of that nature. So if you wanted to expand on that, I wanted to give you that opportunity.
Yeah, and that's why Jim Bouger, 10250 Regency Circle. Yeah, so if you look at the breakdown we had, I'll throw that back up here again. So we have off-site public infrastructure, and then we have what I would call on-site, which would be the, and again, I made some footnotes and then parentheticals in there as to what constituted that on-site site work, which is the street entrance, site utilities, sewer, water, electrical, and site grading. So again, in order to reconfigure that site to all of the infrastructure in that area is old and needs to be rebuilt and, for this facility. So it is, may not service all of the public, the on-site stuff, but it is all utility work and all public, what I would call public infrastructure. So if I was doing an SID, it would be the type of infrastructure that would be built by an SID. So I can lump that into the category of public infrastructure. And then the architectural and engineering and civil engineering, that all relates to the work that needs to be done to develop that. HDR has a lot of work to do or whatever. There's just a lot of architectural and engineering that goes into a development project like this.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to make sure it was clear that not every single dollar goes
Is
into
in Q Street, that is
it's
correct.
connected to some degree.
That's correct,
All
Mr.
right,
Harding.
thank you.
Thanks, Mr. Palermo.
Thank you, Mr. President. And because there's been so much discussion about Q Street, I wanted to remind everyone, I looked through the CIP already. Thank you, Mayor. Q Street's not in here from 60th to 72nd at least, which means when we talk but for, when we talk if this casino will be built with or without TIF, if it's built, who pays for Q Street? Actually, I'm going to ask that question. Sorry, Director Stubbe. Let's say this project moves forward, and because of what we know and because of what Q Street needs, does it come from a bond? How does Public Work in the city pay for an upgrade to improvements that would be necessary to Q Street if this project were to move forward?
Bob Stubbe, Public Works. So again, with regard to anything within the capital improvement program, the CIP, a majority of the cost of those types of improvements would be paid for by bonds that are approved by the citizens of Omaha. In this particular case, you are correct that the section of Q Street from 60th to 72nd Street is not within the 6-year capital improvement program. So I'm going to be selfish here and say that, this type of a project is something that I would consider supporting because it takes funding from an individual source, which is the casino, to pay for public improvements, which Councilmember Melton indicated can be used by anybody driving on Q Street. There's no question that Q Street is what I call a kind of an old county road section. Doesn't have curbs, doesn't have sewers, those types of things. And so improvements to Q Street to add a middle lane to allow for turning movements is a definite improvement over what is there today.
Thank you.
Welcome.
So to reiterate, if this project were to move forward, all of us in this room, everybody listening, would have to pay for these improvements to happen for this to be here. So, and not to mention, as we normally sometimes see TIF up to 12 to 15% of a project, I believe it's 7.9. So they could actually ask for more TIF, but they're not. Thank you.
Thank you. No further lights. There's a motion. Ms. Melton, you're recognized. Okay. No further lights, I don't think. There's a motion and a second to approve. Roll call.
Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 6-1.
Before I take a motion to adjourn the meeting, we do have a request to withdraw number 68 from the applicant prior to our next meeting. So is there a motion to do that? Second. Roll call.
Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Or is there one?
Oh, motion to adjourn.
I'll second that. Roll call.
Rowe. Bagley. Harding. Johnson. Melton. Palermo. Mr. President.
Yes.
Motion passed 7-0. Meeting is adjourned at 4:09.